Welcome back to the Googan Lab. We are not actually in the lab today. Well, we're in the real world lab. We've got a situational video for you today. So we're going to be talking about how to fish, how to approach fishing shallow cover. First technique is going to be a moving bait. So a lot of times if it's windy, the fish are more active. You can get more fish quickly on a moving bait. And it's just a little easier to fish in the wind. So I've got a whole field of brush back here behind me, and we're in the springtime. Fish are starting to move up in the cover. We're coming off a cold front right now, so it's windy at this moment. Some of the other techniques we'll get into here in a little bit, but with any type of moving bait, whether it be a spinner bait like the Zinger here, or a banger, a square bill crankbait, you want to try to get as close to that cover as you can and make contact with it, because that is usually when a big bass will come out and grab it. So when they see a struggle, they hear the bait making contact, that noise, they'll come out, grab it. So we're just going to go through here with our Zinger and try to bump as much of this brush as we can and try to get a moving bait bite. If that doesn't work, then we're going to switch up to Texas rig. In terms of gear, you definitely want to have some heavier line when you're doing this. I would recommend at least 17 when you're fishing around this brush. Usually I like to go 20. I've got a go-to rod right now, throwing the spinner bait. But when I really start getting a soft plastic bait in there, then I'm gonna want, again, at least 20-pound test and a little heavier rod, a heavy powered rod to bring those fish out. With this spinner bait, I'm not going all the way into the cover, I'm just hitting the edges. So I just want enough backbone where I can pull that fish away from that cover in the first few seconds. But I still want that rod to load up for casting and for keeping the fish pinned. Smoked. There we go. That fish was actually not on a visible piece of cover. I was throwing at another target, but I hit an underwater piece of brush on the way through that I didn't see, and that's what that fish came off of. I felt the spinnerbait bump it, and then I got the bite. And that's one thing I like about throwing a moving bait first, is to be able to, you're gonna hit things that you don't even know are there. So you're just covering a lot more water, but they're not always on that moving bait bite. Next up is going to be the Texas rig. Now you could use a jig as well, but just something that has got a weight on it with a plastic or a jig where you can really pick apart the cover. And I love a Texas rig because it's just so weedless. And the way I'm rigging this up here today, I've got a bobber stop, I've got a 3/8 ounce little tungsten weight, I've got a junior trench hog, and then I've got it on a 4/0 hammer hook. So this is made to be Texposed. So when I go through that cover, I'm going to be nice and weedless, and then when a fish eats it, then I can set the hook. But 25-pound line. I usually go 20 or 25 depending on how thick the brush is. And then I've got this on the 7/6 heavy powered rod, which is the Muscle. So we're bringing the Muscle with 25-pound test in the Texas rig. So when these fish grab the Texas rig, they usually will go deeper into the cover. They almost never swim out, so you got to be able to drive their head out of there really quick. So what I'm going to do here is called pitching. And pitching is just throwing your bait a short distance at a piece of cover. You're gonna bump into the brush, make contact a few times, and then you're gonna reel it on back in and go to the next piece of cover and do the same thing. You don't have to leave it sitting there for very long at all. Just bump the brush. If you don't get bit, go to the next piece. Oh, got one. That fish was right in the middle of that brush right there. I pitched it in and I didn't feel the bite. I just saw my line swimming off. Set the hook. Brush bass. Really starting to get a lot of sun here today. Looks like not many clouds. This is when I really like to get the Texas rig and the jig out and pick stuff apart. Bass have a tendency to go towards cover. They feel more comfortable in the cover when the sun is out, pressure's higher, and when it's overcast, you have low pressure, the fish will roam around a little bit more. Usually you'll find that you can get away with not making as accurate casts on those cloudy, overcast days as when it's sunny. They really get in there and you got to make a good cast, and that's when I love to throw that Texas rig because you can get it through the nastiest of cover. So that's really the two things. You got those two different conditions, two different styles of baits, plastics and moving baits. And I would add one more tip. Get yourself some polarized sunglasses because you can see those little pieces of cover that are just under the surface, a little deeper, that you can't without having polarized sunglasses on. So sometimes it makes a difference in getting another fish, that piece of cover that no one has thrown to. So thank you for tuning in for a On the Water episode here of Googan Labs. Make sure to stay tuned. We'll see you on the next one.